ScribbleTalks, Ep.4, here with my guest, Tim Salaz. Tim was previously in Las Vegas, Nevada, but then just recently moved to Houston, Texas. And he's an award-winning and published photographer, but I know him personally from just dancing and battles and other competitions. Tim, how are you, man?
I'm doing great. How are you, sir?
I'm well. Thanks again for joining me and doing this interview. I really appreciate it. Get a little bit more insight on what you do, kind of like where you came from, and just overall what inspires you to keep you going day to day. My first question for you is what I mentioned in the intro. I know you were recently in Las Vegas, Nevada. So what caused your transition or caused you to move to Texas?
Well, mostly, there's a couple things, but I would say the main one is really me and my wife just had our first baby. And we were kind of ready to be in a larger house, and Vegas, as a lot of places with people sort of migrating around the country right now because of COVID, the prices from Vegas got a little high for what we were able to get. My wife is originally from Houston,
Okay.
so it made sense. Plus, we got a nice house out here. Plus, we're 8 minutes from my wife's parents, so they can kind of see the grandbaby grow up, and
Right.
it just felt like from a family perspective it was the right move. And most of my work, especially the last like 3 years, has been all travel based anyway, so it kind of doesn't really matter where I am. I'm always leaving town anyway, so I'm either, if I'm not home, I'm home, or I'm out of town, basically. Like, so those are the two options. So
Gotcha. Well, I hear you on the family tip, especially, with everything happened with COVID and the pandemic. Definitely makes you take a step back and be like, all right, let's get closer to family, keep
yeah,
that community alive and going and keep it.
exactly.
So
You
thank you.
get it. This guy gets it.
Yeah. So, like I said, I started following your photography later on, but I had seen you in several battles. I believe there was two most notable battles I saw was it like Strife TV? Um, what was it? Seven to Smoke. It had other dancers, Larry, Laron,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
D,
That,
Mafioso, Toshi, those guys,
yeah.
and then there was a World of Dance. I believe it was in Vegas, and you and Schizo did like an exhibition battle, and that was kind of like
Yeah.
one of my favorites of you. You just
No,
had
that was actually that was the finals. So what's funny about that is I actually won. Here, watch, I can show you. So I did that twice. That was my second year when I battled Schizo. In the first year, we got this. So,
oh, okay, all
so
right.
I, yeah, the first year I won. And then the second year I entered. And both times it was like, and I feel like people say this all the time. It's like, I wasn't planning on entering. Like, I legit did not go there with the intention of entering. I
Yeah,
honestly was like watching prelims, and I'm like, dude, some of the music's actually really good. So then I jumped in. You know what I mean? So,
gotcha.
but no, Schizo and me battled like all day. It was like a top 64, I think. It
Geez,
was it was a huge battle,
wow.
but you don't see any of the battles
Yeah, I
up
didn't
to
see.
that point. And me and him actually battled in the prelim too.
Oh,
So we were in the same great prelim battling group, and then we battled 32, 16, 8, 4. And I had a tiebreaker in every single round. So I had a pretty tough
that's rough.
route all the way up. And Schizo was sick. So he was like fighting the flu all the way up. So it was honestly, by the time we both got to the finals, I think we were both completely exhausted. So I'm surprised that it
Yo,
actually turned out okay.
that says a lot, and thank you for clarifying that and adding some detail because I don't know, it didn't really look like you guys were really all that exhausted. I mean, I was
Yeah,
feeling the
honestly, I
energy from
was
you,
by the third round, I was completely done. That's probably the most tired I've ever been in a battle.
yeah. But you like, and for me, just watching it, like you had a confidence there that not saying it didn't exist in other battles that I've seen, but it was more
Sure.
apparent there. And you just had like more pizzazz in what you were doing. But I was like, okay,
Oh,
this
thanks.
dude, he's bringing it. He's bringing it.
Yeah, no, it
So
was fun. I mean, the other thing too is Schizo is like probably one of the best dancers in the world. I mean, if not probably, he is one of the best dancers in the world. So it's like you sort of have to, you got to put in more effort. But what's funny is like I tend to do better in those situations when I kind of like feel like, I didn't really care about the outcome. You know what I mean? Like it was like I was there to have fun. I just didn't want to look like trash on stage. So I was like, all right, Because I mean, realistically, when you have those battles like that, it's like, especially with a guy who's got a following like his,
Right.
it doesn't matter whether they win or lose. People that are fans of his, he's always going to be a winner. You know what I
Right.
mean? And that's not a bad thing, but it's just like, that's just the thing. It's like, if somebody was a fan of me and they see me battle, 9 times out of 10, even if I lost, whether legitimately or like it appears as if I lost, like they're gonna say I won either way if they're a fan of me, and it's the same for somebody like that. I think it's just what people do. You know, they take sides and before
Right. You
they.
see a lot of that in the YouTube
Yeah,
comments, and you see it all the
yeah,
time.
it
How
is
they're,
what it is. I don't take any of that
yeah.
stuff personally. You know what I mean? So
Okay. That's great. That's great. I mean, that's a veteran move anyway, not letting it get to you, still doing your thing.
yeah, I
Um,
mean, it's at that, especially at that phase. You know what I mean? Like I don't remember what year that was, but I want to say it was like,
2017, I think.
oh,
Or
okay, so it would have been, I would have been had already battled for 13 years at that point.
yeah.
So I started in 2000. I entered my first battle in 2005.
Yeah. Oh,
So
oh, was
so
that early? I thought so. I think my first competition I ever saw of you was maybe 2009 or 2010.
oh
Uh,
yeah, so yeah, I was a few years into it at that point.
yeah.
Actually, if you go in and look on Pop and John's channel, and it'll say Pop and John. I don't remember what the title is, but it's pretty goofy. But it says Pop and John and Random Smoke Fools or something like something ridiculous. And it was from 2005. So
Wow.
it's like and that's my second battle, but my first like time battling with him, and that's online still. And everybody thought I was Salah, which is really weird
That's
because
crazy.
I'm doing a lot of like that was when like head ISOs were really popular and stuff.
Yeah.
So it was like everybody, yeah, I don't dance anything like him, but they saw like a sort of derby style hat and a guy
Right.
with similar features, and they just assumed that that's who. So,
Right. And I'm
but
sure we
yeah.
we could talk about dance forever, but I want to get into your photography, man. I mean, the from what I've seen, the shots that you capture, the movements, there's really nothing like, especially for somebody like me who's a fan of dance and like
Sure.
all styles of it. So what led you to that passion? Like, when did you start?
So I started a contract on a cruise ship as a performer. I worked for Carnival Cruise Lines as a dancer from like 2010 till like, oh, excuse me, 2010 till about 2014, maybe 15, somewhere around there. And I jumped on like my second contract between that time frame. And so I bought. I used to just walk around and do random visions. This was like where that came from. It was like vlogs before vlogging was really a thing. Like if you go and look at
Right.
like if you they're kind of hard to find because YouTube sort of buries stuff now.
Mhm.
But uh, the old random visions were me just documenting our trips as like a crew. You know what I mean? So I always had a video camera, but then I saw somebody record with like a DSLR. They recorded video, and it was like you could control the focus distance and blur the background out, and it was like, dude, I'm like, why does that look like a movie? So my brain was like, I have to get that camera. So I went and bought a Canon T2i. So I think they're on like T7i. So that gives you an idea how long ago it was. So I bought a Canon T2i. It did HD video, and it was like a 12 megapixel camera or something like that. It's like an iPhone would kill this thing now. And but it was interchangeable lenses. So
Right.
I bought that, and I bought my first 50 millimeter, and took it out of the box, threw it on, was like hit record, and it looked terrible. So I was like, I had no idea how to use this thing. Like it was like I had all these expectations that it was just going to be like a regular video camera. So I didn't understand how to use it, and so I had to figure out with like ISO settings and shutter and aperture. I had to basically learn all that stuff. And while I was learning it from a photography um, language, because video cameras and photography at the time they were pretty separate, and they
Right.
still kind of are. There's rules that apply to both. Like I actually do video and photo professionally both now, but with I was learning it from a photography thing. So then I was like, all right, well, let me try and take some photos. So I started taking photos of the cruise ship dancers on Sundays. So the we would perform and we do all of our stuff, but on Sunday night the theater was closed to the guests, and so we'd have this giant projection screen that we would bring down, and that we used to use for like bingo and stuff. You know what I mean, like on the cruise ship. And I used to basically, it was just a giant white wall, so I used to drop that down and I started practicing on this white wall with the stage lights, and then slowly progressed to I think that photography, this was where my brain went. It was like, all right, these photos look okay, but why does like these really good photographers look better than what I'm doing? And it boiled down to lighting. So I started learning how to use strobes, like the little small, hot shoe strobes. Like, I'll show you an example. You probably know what I'm talking about, but maybe your people don't. So it was like this, like something like this. So I bought two of these, something similar, and a couple light stands, and I threw them on the camera, and you have this little trigger, and you plug the trigger in, and I hit the shutter button, and the lights went off, and it was like, and the photo just immediately was like, that's a photo. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, I knew immediately like there was a difference. So I started studying like off-camera flash and sort of like light positioning, different styles of lighting, like Rembrandt lighting, and they would do the old school Hollywood styles. They would do, start talking about broadside lighting, overhead, the shower style lighting, split lighting, like, and then, triangle formations of single light, whatever. So I started basically learning two lights, and every Sunday I would shoot a different dancer every Sunday. And a lot of them weren't very good. Like the photos by my standards now weren't very good, but I got hours in, you know what I mean? So like I got a lot of hours under my belt. So then I started downloading photography courses from like photographers who I saw, and it was like how to use your hot shoe. So by the time I got off my cruise ship, I'd already had a pretty good understanding on how to take like a decent portrait. But I never really had an opportunity to shoot outside.
Gotcha.
Like it was all on this stage with a white wall, which is fine because you can do a lot creatively. But then I got outside and we were in Vegas and we went to the desert and I was shooting for this competition. It was like, we want you to do 3 photos to submit. It was for this company called Broncolor. And they said, we want you to do 3 photos to submit. And I still have this paper. And they basically said, we want you to submit the photos and the winner will get like a $20,000 lighting kit. I didn't win, but I have the paper that I wrote down all the ideas on. Like I actually like said, all right, I this is the concept. I want, this to be, a skateboarder coming towards this thing, and I want the lighting to be positioned here. And so I did those photos. I did all 3 of them, like exactly how I listed, and I was like, dude, I can shoot outdoors now. Like it was weird. So it was cool to like actually pencil down the idea and then physically do it. And then what was funny is so that those photos didn't win that competition, but one of the ones that I took of my wife won like 4 later.
Oh wow.
So I
Dope.
ended up winning like 4 competitions with this same photo that I submitted for this other one, but I resubmitted it later for different competitions and I've won 4 times with that same photo. So clearly somebody liked it, you know what I mean? So,
Right.
but
Right.
yeah, so it's pretty cool. It's been a process though.
Right. Now, when would you say you kind of hit your stride with this thing? Do you recall that moment?
Hold on, sorry, I just spilled my damn drink. Sorry. So let me think. Well, I don't know. Like when you say stride, what do you mean? Like just like making money, or just like feeling
When
like I've got a
just
style, or
yes, when you realize you are completely happy with the direction that you're going with things, and you feel like, okay, this is paying off. Everything that I did in recent years, like all the hard work, all the time, you've just realized in that moment, like, oh, I'm doing this, and I can do it well, and everything is working out.
um, probably more recently. Like like it's hard to give yourself credit for stuff. I think everybody sort of like is pretty critical of themselves, and I'm definitely one of those people. But I definitely realized that I was moving faster in photography than I was in dancing. And the reason that I think that was because in dancing, I took a lot of, I think criticism is really important. Like, I think getting feedback from people is super important. But if you almost get too much feedback on whether or not you're doing something right, you almost lose your own self within that process because you're kind of just become like, like you're catering to what other people think you should do. You know what I
Right.
mean? So I realized that photography, and this is like this with a lot of stuff. Like I do all kinds of stuff. Like I collect comic books and play video games, and I'm a nerd to the core. So it's like I'm into a bunch of different things. And I've noticed that no matter what it is, there's always a large, I don't think it's a lot of people, but when you talk about like social media, there's a very loud but small audience that tends to try and pass judgment um, on things. And I think it's very prevalent in dance and it's very prevalent in photography. Because I used to notice that I would post like my stuff on certain forums, and you
Hmm.
would always get somebody that was like, "Oh, bro, you're." I remember I had a guy. I posted like a behind the scenes uh, photo, and I have like a way of shooting now where I don't always look through the camera all the time. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I have the camera positioned. I kind of like frame my shot, and I look with my eye at the dancer because I want to see the moment that they do the thing with my eye, not through the camera, because there's a delay. There's always a lag
Right.
with digital cameras. They're getting better now, but with the camera that I'm shooting now, that's kind of one of my complaints about it. So a lot of times I'll frame it and I look, and so that way when I look, I'm not like making the dancer do it 64 times. I want to
Right.
just do it the one time. And I remember the guy was like, "Oh, you're holding the camera dumb." You know what I mean? Like, and it's like, dude, you see the photo.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's just so silly that people like they get focused on something like the process rather than the result. And it's like I um I don't know if it's coming from a place of like, oh, my work's not that good, so I gotta kind of crap on this guy's, or who knows? I don't know why people are like that, but
Right.
and so my point being is I stopped taking advice from photographers because at the end of the day, when you're shooting photos, that's not your audience. You know what I mean? Like you're shooting for people that are gonna view it. A lot of times, like my following is like people who like photos, not people who take them. You know what I mean? So it's like you get a little bit of that, right? Like if you do a lot of educational type stuff, maybe you get more photographers following you. But a lot of times it's like people who just like looking at, visually cool stuff. So it's
Absolutely.
like if you spend too much time sort of like focusing on like trying to make a photographer happy, you almost like take away because it's like they don't care about like how sometimes like if your horizon line is constantly perfect, or you know what I mean, like if you decide to do this like Dutch angle on a weird
Right.
photo.
The technicalities of it all. Yeah.
Sure, yeah, like sometimes technical stuff is important, but you eventually get to a point where that's like step one.
Hmm.
If you're going to sit on step one forever, you're never going to get anywhere else. You're just going to sit on step one. It's like when people get really with dance analogy, people get really obsessed with like being on a specific beat all the time. It's like, dude, that's step one. Like, of course, they have to be on them. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, duh. Like, so it's like if that's all you're focusing on, you're not looking at like maybe the physicality of the dancers, their lines, maybe they're a little more extension. Like, there's a lot of other things that
Yeah.
you could give a dancer or an artist credit for that maybe aren't just like the technical step one type rule. Um, and it's like that a lot with photography. They get really critical, like, oh, you blew out a highlight on this girl's hair here, like, you know what I mean, or something like that. It'll be like, oh, you're so. I basically got over like trying to please photographers and just said, look, I just want to take photos of stuff that looks badass.
Right.
And so dancers make it easy on me because they already are cool, um, and so basically it kind of became this thing where it was like I knew the culture of dance, I knew what looked good, or at least had a pretty good idea. It was a little harder when I got into like the contemporary dance and the ballet and stuff because I had to sort of learn that,
Right.
you know, like their positioning, their leg positioning, their feet, all that stuff has to sort of be in a very specific place. So, but eventually, you know, you get those things figured out and then you keep moving forward. And so now it's just like anything that moves, you know, you give me a motorcycle or a BMX rider or an MMA fighter or anything like that. And I'm like happy to take photos of it because I like stuff that just is flying through the air and, you
Yeah.
know, you catch this sort of moment in time. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, that's basically what it started, man. I mean, that was a long answer, but it went from buying a camera to film myself dancing to learning how to use the camera to just falling in love with seeing lights flash, and that was it, man. It was a done deal after that. So
got it. Well, I'm loving your answers, man, so far. I want to say
oh
maybe I have 2 to 3 questions left. I know I don't want to keep you too long.
no, you're good. You actually, I have like another like 20 minutes, so you take your
Okay.
time.
So my next question is, what are you inspired by right now? Like, do you have like one or two photographers that you look
Hmm.
to for inspiration, or is it from your friends, or what do you get your inspiration from right now?
Right now, um, you know, that's a good question. I know, to be honest, like a lot of times it's I will say that I am getting a lot more into like video stuff. Not more into it, but like I started to get a little more into video stuff because that's what my job that I have right now. I do a combination of photo and video.
Okay.
And so I wanted to like get better at that skill because that is a little different. But as far as photographers that I've liked, I mean, to be honest, like one of the first photographers that I ever like followed was Little Shao, which he does basically all the Red Bulls, B-boys and stuff. And I think all his work is just stellar. You know what I mean? Like, so Lilshao,
Okay.
and you can follow him on Instagram, and he's just dope. Like as far as like, especially for like street dance community. He's from Paris, and he's just got really good stuff, man. Really good stuff. So shout outs to Little Shao. There's a couple other photographers that I like. I mean, this girl named Lindsay Adler.
Lindsay Adler.
She's not really a dance photographer, but her lighting is just like nuts. Like she can, because like a lot of what they talk about with lighting is like the best way that I try and explain it to people is they're like, okay, well, how do I get better at lighting? It's like, all right, well, think of like a ball, like a sphere, right? And your goal is to make that like if I draw a circle like on a piece of paper, like with lighting, your goal is to make that flat piece of paper look like it's a sphere, right? Because like if you think about a photo, like right now, if I didn't have lighting, I'd look pretty flat, right? So the goal is like I want to make me look 3D on a photo. You know what I mean? So it's like the goal with a lot of that stuff is to like basically make features pop with light. Like if I want to make this section of my face like jump out,
Right.
like I'm even looking at you like you right now. So you have this like highlight on your head. That's like actually adding to this like feature on your face, right? So that Lindsay Adler girl, she just does such a good job of like shaping people and just making them look so ridiculously 3D and stuff. So she's really dope. There's a few others that I definitely follow. There's one of right now the thing that's kind of blowing my mind with the video is the stuff that these people are doing with like sort of green screen, um, you know, keyframing, and you know, it'll look like somebody punches them and they hit a wall, and it's like they're doing this at home with like a blue screen and you know, like a buddy in a green screen suit. And I
Right.
know how they're doing it, but it's a little different when you have to practice those skills. So there's definitely a lot to learn. Like even Maricana, who's also another dancer. I
Yes.
don't know if you follow him, but he does like really cool little video edits, and they're not super easy to do. So he took the time to really like kind of play with video editing, and it's not like the filming is particularly like crazy. It's not like it's this high production, but it's just him in front of a camera in his house, and he's just playing with a couple little like editing tools and toys and making some really cool stuff. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that too. So you got like your advanced $30,000 kit photography, and then you got, you know, like, hey, I got a green screen and a camera,
Right.
and you know, depending on how creative you are, you can make something really cool out of that either way. So regardless of what lane you're in, you know what I
Right.
mean, you can make something fun.
Yeah, people are creating like wonders with the simplest tool, especially when it comes to TikTok videos and variations and cutscenes and all that.
Yeah, it's impressive, man. I mean, I don't know what that means for like the industry as a whole when it comes to photography, if that's a good or bad thing necessarily, industry speaking, but from a creative standpoint, it's awesome. You know what I mean? So, like even like I was telling you earlier, I follow a lot of comic books and stuff, and like this year, one of my favorite movies came out. It was the Zack Snyder's Justice League,
Oh yeah.
and so what was cool about that I loved, and I personally like his movies. I know a lot of people don't, but I like his movies. But anyway, one of the cool things I found out was that he filmed a chunk of that movie with a green screen in his driveway. Like there was a few sections that weren't finished, and because of COVID, he flew like the actors to his house, and they filmed these sections in a green screen in a driveway. And when you see the movie, you're like, dude, how the
Oh,
like how?
okay.
Like you still can't really like process. Like obviously, I know it's a lot of computer work, but it's just like, man, like it's
Unreal.
really limitless the amount of stuff you can do, man. You're only limited by like, skill set and creativity and just the effort. Like I wouldn't even say skill set. It's really just effort.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like if you're just willing to say like, look, I'm going to film this thing and just try and do something. And I've noticed that the willingness to just do it, whether or not it's perfect or not, just doing the thing is probably more valuable than like spending hours learning a skill or marketing yourself. Just do it. Like if you have an idea, just do it. Even if it's not perfect, even if it's not fully fleshed out, just make the effort to take the second and do it. And most of my friends that really just grind it out like that are the ones that I've noticed that are like doing the most right now. So it's definitely been a good lesson for me because I tend to like write my ideas down in like notepads, and I got like ideas for movies and scripts and
Right.
shows and all these things, and it's like, man, eventually I'm gonna have to just do all this stuff. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So it's definitely that's definitely a message I would give to anybody that's trying to get into anything creative. Is just, hey man, if you got an idea, just go for it.
Right.
Even if it doesn't win.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly because you never know one what kind of gold mine you're sitting on, and even in a failed attempt or a failed project, what you learn from that is so much more valuable
Yeah.
than if you
Well,
would
it's
have.
like the thing I told you earlier about the I made that photo for a contest, that I lost, but then later that same photo won 3 other contests.
Exactly.
So it's, you know what I mean? Like just do it. Like just go for it. Like so
Right.
it's like Nike. Nike knew what they were talking about, man.
All right. Well, my last question for you is so, you know, I've heard so much about fatherhood and how it changes a man, how it
Oof.
changes people. Can you speak? Because I don't want it to be too personal, so you feel free to
Yeah.
hold back whatever you'd like. But when it comes to fatherhood, how has that changed you as a person? You could mention
Ooh.
like your personal growth, and you can mention how it's affected you professionally as well, like how you go about certain things.
Yeah. Oof. That's a big one.
It is.
Um,
And simplify it, as freely as you like. It doesn't have to be super detailed, but however you feel you can get your point across, go ahead.
well, I not to get too personal or nothing, but I grew up without a dad. So statistically speaking, that doesn't bode well. You know what I mean for
Right.
anybody. There's tons of data that says if you grow up without a dad, you're really unlikely to do well, and or just have a harder time in general. And so luckily, I had a great mother, and when my wife and I decided that we wanted to get pregnant, or she wanted to have a baby. It took us a few years to get to that phase, and we had her, and she had a really complicated pregnancy too. Um, so it was the whole process to getting her here was a journey. But I would say, so is your question more like just like how has that motivated me, or just like what is it? what does fatherhood mean to me, or
Yeah, so how has it motivated you? And then in what ways has your perspective changed with certain things?
okay. So perspective, I'll give you that one. So motivation, when you have a kid, it's like putting a rocket up your ass. So you're always gonna have, you know what I mean? Like you're always gonna have like more desire. But I think these two things kind of go hand in hand. I remember I sat my baby was about 3 weeks old, and she had just like swapped from like newborn diapers to like size ones, you know, and then next thing I know, she was like not wearing the same size onesies anymore. And I sat up and I cried for like 25 minutes about that. And not in like a bad way. Like it was like I realized like time is ridiculously valuable. Like the sheer amount of time that it took for her to go from just a huge growth was minimal. Like it took no time and she was just there. And it feels like it all happened in a blink. Like she's already 6 months old and I can't even process that. So I know that I'm going to blink again and she's going to be 3, and I'm going to blink again and she's going to be 5. And I'm going to blink again and she's going to be 12, trying to talk about boyfriends. And then I'm going to blink again. I'll be in jail because I killed him. I'm just kidding. But it's just like the idea that it's like trying to hold on to sand, man. Like it's you realize like how fragile that time is when you have a kid and how fast it goes by. So I'm really trying to be like as present as possible, and when I have her, and so that's a big one. You know what I mean? Like my perspective on that has changed for sure. So the the even like little stuff, man. I do math. Like I'll be like, because I got offered to do a dance gig again, that would have required me not to do the current job that I'm doing. Because right now I work basically weekends, like Thursday, Friday, and then I'm back home Sunday night. Or sometimes it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I'm back home Sunday night. But like those other days from Monday to Thursday, I have completely off, and so I just basically spend my whole day with her.
Right.
And that's actually better for me because I prefer that, because it's like if I had like a 9 to 5 type job, I
Yeah.
basically would only get to see her from 5 till she goes to bed, which is like 2.5 hours. You know what I mean? So it's like I prefer the schedule I have now because I can literally like spend all day with her for 3 to 4 days straight, and
Right.
then I kind of miss her for a couple of days, and then we restart it. So, but yeah, man, time 100% is the thing. You can't get it back, and they grow up super fast. And now my perspective, it used to be like sad for me, but now it's kind of more like oh I'm like I feel like I'm like watching her go. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, oh, look at her go, like she's doing. You know what I mean? Like so it's actually it became this like sad thing that almost turned into joy as well, because it's like now I get to like watch the little flower, the seed grow into a flower, etc. So
Right.
but yeah, that was the biggest realization, was like, dude, I did not realize how fast the shit, like the me and my wife, the new saying, it's not, we didn't make it up or nothing, but the new saying is like the days are long but the years are short. So it's been a cool experience kind of understanding what that means.
I like that saying, and I definitely appreciate the perspective. Being more present is actually something that I'm working on. People close to me have mentioned that to me as well. I find that I'm always like thinking about something or thinking about the future and how to make certain moves, and I need to actually relax more, take a step back, and just do everything I can now, and just follow that same kind of principle, from here on out. So,
Well, it's just being disciplined too, man. I mean, I do it. I'll be hanging out with my kid and I pull out the phone from time to time. Nobody's perfect, but
right.
if you could just sort of like have that in the back of your head, it definitely will help. So, but yeah, man. And nowadays, like, fuck, can't help it, man. A whole other conversation about like neurological, triggers and stuff that these tech
Yeah.
companies are setting you up for. It's like, dude, they know how our brains work better than we do, man. They can click a button and all of a sudden we're just zapped into something. We can't really help it, man.
Exactly.
We're all just primates at the end of the day. So, but yeah, if you can try and try and do that, like especially if there's any like expecting fathers that might watch this, man, just appreciate that time. I miss, I kind of miss my wife being pregnant a little bit, but I don't at the same time. So it's just one of those things you just sort of like appreciate what, appreciate the chapter of life you're in when you're in that chapter, because once that chapter closes, you're on to something next, and that's a beautiful part of life too. But I had to learn that life works in chapters. You know what I mean? You're not going to be in the young single happy guy phase forever. You're not going to be in the young parent phase forever, and you're not going to be in the you know prime of your life phase forever. It all goes in chapters, and the best you can
Right.
do is just love where you're at and just do your best. You know what I mean? So
Right. Absolutely. Tim, well, first off, or lastly, thank you so much for doing this interview.
no problem, dude. I had a
I
good time.
appreciate, your answers, your perspectives, even your vulnerability, expressing, what you and your wife have dealt with, and even some of the things you dealt with growing up. Thankful and happy that you and your wife are past that stage, and, you have a healthy baby, and you guys are moving along in life, and you had a great move, and everything's going smooth.
Jeez. It's not all the way smooth. I'll be honest with you. Look, this is my office right now. This is life in a life lesson for you. This is what you really see is the unpackedness right now. So it'll get there though. It'll look cool in a month. So hit
I
me
have
up in a month. I'll show you a picture.
the same
Yeah.
thing.
So you get it. That's how it goes, man. That's all right. That's okay though. It's like I said, this is the unpacking chapter. We'll get to the cool part later.
Right, absolutely. Well, listen, everyone, Scribble Talks Ep.4. My lovely guest, Tim Salaz. I really appreciate you, man. Thank you so much. Until next time, take care.
Peace, guys.